Good evening, everybody. I'm Mark Walters of BigFanboy.com, and welcome to our live debate, discussion, whatever you want to call it, for Nerd Fight. I tell you what, guys, why don't we just real quickly, so everybody knows who the hell you are. Adam, tell everybody who you are. We'll kind of go down the row here.
Hi, so I'm Adam Donaghy. I'm one of the partners here at the Texas Theater.
Yay. That's it? That's all you do?
I produce movies.
And Adam may have to go to the bathroom in the middle of this panel.
That's entirely possible.
We're taking our bets, but...
My name is Devin Pike. I am a writer, director, and entertainment specialist. I am the head of GrumpyOldFans.com. I've been writing for BigFanboy.com for the last, 6 or 7 years?
Too long.
Far too long. You'll fire me eventually.
Hi, I'm Kate Morgan. I have written a lot of places. One of those places that I've written about films is Nerdclave, but I'm currently working with Newscastic to do some awesome stories about places you want to go in Dallas.
Griffin?
Hi, my name is Griffin Smucker. I am a theater manager here at the Texas Theater and also the head of digital cinema as well here.
Matthew?
And I'm Kenneth Denson. I'm one of the co-owners of Red Pegasus Games and Comics here in Oak Cliff.
All right. So, and I'm Mark Walters of BigFanboy.com. So thanks for coming out. We're going to talk about a few what we consider to be hot talking points. We'll kind of go over some of our thoughts on that. And then at some point a little bit later, we want to engage you guys and get some of your thoughts on this stuff too. So if you have some burning questions, be thinking about those, and we will call on audience members a little bit later. So Adam, I want to start with you because I know that there's a couple of aspects of the film that you are a little bit perturbed by, particularly involving Han and Luke. So why don't we start there, and then we'll kind of go around the panel and see what everybody thinks.
Well, I mean, I want to start off and say that I love the film. I think that it's a lot of fun, and I've seen it, I think 4 times now, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot, I think. And only here, though. I want to venture out and watch it at the Omni we were talking about in Fort Worth. No, I mean the biggest issue that I have is I'm not necessarily buying that both Han and Luke have just kind of turned their backs after Kylo Ren slaughters everybody and joins the dark side and all of that kind of stuff. And I just think that, their arcs in the original trilogy, and especially in Return of the Jedi, I mean, Luke, for example, he's fully Jedi, and you're with him. He's there. And to think that, he goes through all that, and then suddenly, not even his own son, but Han's son, and of course, his nephew, to think that he would just break away from all that really disturbs me. And Han as well, to think that he would leave his wife and just go back on he does the most selfless thing in the original trilogy, and originally it allows Luke and Leia, who they didn't necessarily know that they were brother and sister, he thought that was a thing, and letting that go, letting his love for her go, is a very selfless act and not necessarily in his character. So to see that happen and then now he's just going to leave her really bothered me.
Right, but there's also, 30, 40 years that we don't know what took place. So there could be a lot of things that happened at that time. And I always kind of perceived, I don't know how you guys felt about it, but I perceived that the reason that Luke went into hiding was because he felt like he was a failure. That he tried really hard to, build this, basically resurrect the Jedi, and then in the process, Kylo Ren steps up and starts slaughtering all these guys, and Luke probably in that process felt like he failed in what he was trying to do. Devin, you want to comment on that?
You and I are going to have to share this. I get the frustration mostly because we don't know the full extent of what happened with, when they hand Ben over to Luke to train. We don't know how old he was because there's that whole emotional attachment thing that let's just remember, the Jedi are a bunch of jerks. the Sith are a bunch of fascists, so there's you go 6 one, half a dozen of the other. But they at least got it right, where the less emotional attachment you have, the easier it is for you to not get emotional, not be easier turned to the dark side. We don't know how old he was when he decides to go off to wherever Luke was training, but that's got to. I mean, it's a lot of ridiculous pressure. There's no support system for Luke. He is the last Jedi, and for him to lose the entire crop of Jedi acolytes at the hands of one of his own nephew, I mean, it's just got to be just bone crushing for him at that point. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of in Episode 8.
Anybody want to add to that?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is that I think it was just an emotionally devastating thing for it to have happened. So it didn't seem too far out of character for somebody who's tried to build this thing up from nothing and it just get completely destroyed to just go into exile.
I mean, I think that it's good storytelling, and I think that it sets up Episode 8. But I still have, I mean, just knowing that this is what we're seeing immediately after the original trilogy, and going back and revisiting that, I just have, I mean, I understand what you guys are saying, but I don't. I think that it's a little much. I think it's a little. It's almost too. It's too neat. It's like, oh, well, here we're gonna place this little story on this platter, and I mean, it's typical, unfortunately, but I just think that we should have seen some. It's too neat.
Kate, you want to add to this?
Well, when I saw Han and Leia, and the way they interacted, and the way I sometimes think about interacting with my own ex-husband, right? To be honest, to be fair. And the fact that Leia's playing this strong general, and Han was always a rebel. I think about the fact that their two lives may have been completely incompatible, and the fact that they've got this son that sort of got caught up in the middle of that. Yeah. And that's kind of how I saw that playing out. I don't really know that I have any more to say about that deeply, but it seemed to me like between both of them wanting to pursue their own selves, which, when I tend to look at Lucas and I look at how he situates the ideas of Joseph Campbell and all the rest of that stuff that went through that, it really is about the journey of self anyway. So that's kind of what I saw going on when I saw that.
Well, and you also brought up an interesting point, because Han is never going to be able to follow orders the way a normal general, or someone to a general would, because of their relationship. So maybe he felt like the distance was the only way that they could really coexist.
Mark, since you've never been married, you probably don't get the fact that if you have any kind of a fight on how one person in the relationship wants to do something as opposed to I want to do it this way, there's never a right in it. There's just like this person has this view, this person, regardless of who's actually right, which, by the way, it's always Leia, isn't it? So.
All right, so Devin, since you challenged me on that, I'm going to challenge you on something that I know is a hot button for you, and that is that I feel, and I'm not in any way saying this to say that the film is bad or that I didn't like it, but I do feel like this is a thinly veiled remake of A New Hope. And I think that they did that. I'm going to quantify it. They did it on purpose.
I'm breathless.
They did it on purpose because they had to win back the fan base. They had to go with the safe route, because this is the way to get everybody back on their side, so that then hopefully in the next couple of films they can take some bigger risks and do things that weren't expected. But that said, I think that a lot of this kind of follows that exact same template as New Hope. And you wholeheartedly disagree with me, don't you?
I do. Do you feel like Return of the Jedi was a remake of Star Wars? Yes or no?
Kinda. I mean, not exactly. I mean, the ending is quite different. But they still blow up the Death Star the same way.
Exactly, and it hews closer to the structure of Star Wars than The Force Awakens does. And you hit it on the head. Even with J.J. Abrams and Larry Kasdan writing the script, they're still very, very close to the Joseph Campbell mythos and the path of the hero. And there's still areas of that path that we haven't seen in the series yet. And if Rian Johnson decides to go that route, so be it. But I agree with you that they had to make things really familiar for Star Wars fans. because after having watched the prequels again, after staying away from them for about 8 or 10 years and watching them again in preparation for Force Awakens, God almighty, what a slog. And you had to absolutely cleanse your palate. Please, how many of you guys watched the prequel movies when you were getting ready for the Force Awakens to come out? Every single one of you dusted off your DVDs or bought it on Blu-ray, you sick, twisted bastards. And you had to have familiar elements in there, not just for the hardcore fans who have been around for 2 generations, but also for the kids who the only thing they know about Star Wars is Darth Maul, is Yippee, is I hate you! You know, it's...
Darth Maul's an incredible villain, but...
Yeah, and completely misused, but...
And can I quickly just piggyback in terms of when you say, I mean, it's a similar Death Star or whatever. It's not like technology has. I mean, it's been like how many years has it been? 30 years. 30 years. So technology hasn't necessarily been leaps and bounds. I mean, they're still using the holograms and things like that. They're going to go back to what they know, and that's what they know. They know how to make big circular planetary bases.
But they still put an exhaust port on it to blow it up.
And every single thing that I dislike about The Force Awakens has to do with Starkiller Base. Every single thing. I think, even with suspension of disbelief, I mean, you don't have to be Neil deGrasse Tyson to look at it and go, yeah, I'm going to suck out all the power of the sun across an entire astronomical unit and send that weapon beam thousands of light years away, and in 5 minutes it's going to take out 7 star systems. You can only bend it so much. Starkiller Base is everything that's wrong with The Force Awakens. But that said, there's so much that works right with it.
Hey, Griffin, we haven't heard from you. Why don't you weigh in on it?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this. My biggest problem was Kylo Ren. I thought he, as far as being the big bad villain, was really not that terrifying. It was kind of a petulant child.
Yeah.
I mean, half the time you look at him, he gets angry about something, and he's just carving into the wall. I mean, I remember, as a kid, when I
He's
first
charming.
Yeah. He's the villain.
I hope you never have children.
I just remember, watching the original 3 on VHS as a kid, and every time Darth Vader walks into a shot, you're scared out of your mind. Every time Kylo Ren, who I've been actually referring to as Krylo Ren, walks into a scene, he's just not that scary. And that's what kind of lost me with the film was I wasn't afraid of this guy. He did not, like I said, he was a petulant child. He didn't get his way, and so he took a lightsaber and carved the wall out. Like, he just wasn't scary enough. I didn't buy any of it because of that one character for the most part.
So let me see if I'm crystal clear on this. You've got somebody who is more adept with being able to manipulate the dark side of the Force, where he can stop a blaster fire in midair, hold it for about 5 minutes, and then decide he's done with it and let it go. Interrogation techniques that we never saw out of Vader other than choking the living hell out of somebody. And by the way, not a Sith, not somebody who is fully trained. That's what we see from Snoke in the middle of or at the end of the flick is, bring him here, I'm going to complete his training. Kylo. He's a knight of Ren. Don't send me Twitter.
I say Ren sometimes.
Well, I'm sure that there's going to be something about the Knights of Ren and how he rallies them together, and we'll see that either in Ep 8 or
Darth.
Yeah, which Alec Guinness which Kenobi does in the middle of the Death Star because they couldn't figure out whether that was a proper name or not. But Kylo is basically where Luke Skywalker was right at the end of Star Wars as far as the steps of his training. He hasn't had a chance to go to Yoda yet. He hasn't had a chance to go to Snoke yet. I think the child thing is actually accurate because regardless of how old Adam Driver or Ben is supposed to be at this point, I'm still going to call him Ben because I hate him for what he did. I think that the terror in it is the unpredictability and being a moody little bastard. I think that makes it scarier because there's no predictability in it. Darth Vader is a badass, make no question about it. but I think that the unpredictability makes it scarier.
Well, and I think with Vader, he was so imposing, and I guess like I just never got that from the character in this movie, and so for me it was just kind of lost because Vader, like you said, would walk in and just choke guys out.
So if they'd
Just
used
kind of
James Earl Jones's voice instead of Adam Driver's, you'd have had a better time with it?
No, but I think what Griffin's getting at, and I think also this kind of feeds into, I think they didn't want to just do Vader again. I think they wanted to do something different, and the way to do that is to do it without control and without, poise. I mean, the fact that he is an petulant child and he's temperamental, I imagine is going to feed into why he did what he did when Luke was trying to train him. And this also kind of feeds in. We talked about this last night, Devin, about how maybe in the process of Luke trying to train him, he was skipping steps, and that's why he knows how to do things that we've never seen before, but doesn't know how to lightsaber fight like a pro. So that would kind of explain why, and again, that feeds into I'm temperamental, I'm petulant, I want to skip the steps, this sounds cool, I want to stop laser blast, I want to skip all these other steps so I can learn how to stop laser blast.
And just to also add to what Devin was talking about, what makes his character potentially really awesome, in the next episode is, the stuff that Devin's talking about, also the fact that he takes a laser blast from Chewie's crossbow. And Han thrusts that thing and shoots 3 stormtroopers 30 feet away. It's a big deal that he can do that and still fight 2 people who have lightsabers, and they're not trained either, and there's a lot of problems there with regards to how this fight's going to play out, but he's really wounded and he's still able to do what he's doing.
Yeah, so we have to assume he's got a hole through him because of that crossbow blast, and that's why he's beating his chest to keep himself going and everything.
So you're seeing a very strong, albeit misguided, villain. So it's important, and I think it'll play out. And I will say this very quickly too. I don't know how many times you've seen it, Griffin, but Kylo kind of warmed on me after a couple of viewings.
Kate, you look like you have something you want to add here.
I do, and I'm noticing that we're noticing these differences between Darth Vader and Kylo Ren, but what's the similarity? And the similarity seems to be that the dark side of the Force is following that drive inside you to have your own self-will triumph against everyone else around you, right? What's the light side and the dark side of the Force? So we're seeing 2 faces of it here. We're seeing, Kylo Ren being a little more whiny, petulant, and untrained in it, but just because Darth Vader didn't have training didn't mean he wasn't following some sort of selfish aim for himself. So I feel like in almost carving up these differences, we aren't looking enough at the similarity and what, George Lucas sort of crafted these 2 ideas to be.
Well, and I also love that we see him questioning himself. Not just once, we see him questioning himself multiple times throughout the movie, which does kind of speak to how Leia says, I know there's good in him, I know there's light in him. Maybe there is light in him. Maybe he will redeem himself, and maybe in a different way from what we saw in Return of the Jedi. Yes, Devin?
One of the things that you hear over and over again is the Force is not light or dark itself. If you're an adept in it, you make the decision on what part of the Force you want to embrace. And the Skywalkers are stronger in it than really anybody else, and we still don't know if Rey is a Skywalker yet. Hold your freaking opinions and theories. Oh, God, fan theories. Please just enjoy the freaking movie. But, please! But,
What? You don't like that Rey's the Emperor's daughter? You don't like that fan theory? You don't like that Rey is no, go ahead.
No, I like the theory that Snoke is Snoke. I like that theory a whole lot. It's more the dark side, and it's the speech that Yoda gives in Empire Strikes Back. The dark side is more seductive. It's easier to get what you want. So when you're learning kung fu, you want to do the 5-point exploding heart palm technique, and you want to skip all the rest of the steps. The dark side allows you to do that, but it's the gaps in between. And I think you nail it on the head. That if you look at every single Skywalker that we've seen in the Star Wars series, and that goes all the way up to the nephew Skywalker, is that they're all massively Force adept, and the ones that decide to listen to the dark side wind up going bad in a really nasty way.
Yeah. Kenneth, you want to add?
I wanted to ask a question because I'll be honest, I didn't get all the way through my rewatch before this, so maybe somebody can remind me. When he talks about I'm being torn apart, the struggle between the dark side and the light, is that something we've seen any other character?
Anakin. Yeah, Anakin.
So those are obviously the ones I didn't get all the way through.
Good job. No, you didn't miss much.
Let's talk a little bit about Rey. Obviously, there's been some various debate about the character, people using words like she's a Mary Sue. I didn't like it either.
I was told to punch anybody who said that, by the way.
I thought. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying other people said that. So take your punch
does
back.
that too. You know that, right?
I'm not.
I thought Rey
just wanna
was.
punch you.
I thought Rey was a great character, and I thought that Rey kind of made me think of what would essentially be the female equivalent to Luke from the first movie, and I thought it was great to kind of see it from that perspective. I also didn't feel like there were any real outwardly like female aspects of the character. It just seemed like a gender neutral character. Like this could have been a male character or a female character. It doesn't matter. And I think that's one of the reasons you can attach to that character and follow it through the film. And Kate, you want to talk about how you feel about this?
Well, sure. You use the word gender neutral. I mean, I definitely saw some visual cues that made her female. So for me, it's not so much gender neutrality as it is finally some sort of recognition that gender is a performance a lot of times for a lot of people and how they perceive it. And there can be a masculine performance of femininity, and Rey's doing that well, actually. I mean, there are some criticisms. I know I read one on HuffPo today that, I was kind of thinking about as I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about. And, there was a call out for, let's stop masculinizing feminine characters and instead create this space where feminine characters can really be feminine. And I just wanted to respond going, no, femininity is a range of performance, just as masculinity is a range of performances. So what I like to see is characters who perform it differently than what a stereotype might make it used to, whether it's a rugged masculinity or a soft femininity.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like she felt like a strong character without being like you said. I didn't think they tried to make her masculine. She just seemed like a strong female, and I respected that.
There were bits at the outset when both Finn and Rey are on Jakku and they're meeting each other for the first time, and I thought it was an interesting thing, and I don't know if it was Abrams or Kasdan who were nudging in that direction, where Finn felt it necessary to grab her and pull her along out of danger, and Rey immediately says, "You don't need to pull me. I can run on my own." Yeah. And I thought that was a really sly, subtle bit of, I can handle this.
Well, I also kind of love the fact that Finn runs up to help her and realizes, oh, well, she can take care of herself.
Not only that, she can kick his ass, too.
Yeah, she could kick
I mean,
his ass.
it's also like a throwback to, I think like Han and Leia, their kind of rebuttal back and forth. But yeah, I mean, I think that Rey, she's a badass. I don't see. I mean, is there very much criticism of
the criticism of the Mary Sue thing came out of her being able to seemingly do everything without any training or any sort of background to know how to do it. Like being able to get on the Falcon and fly the Falcon, being able to pick up a lightsaber and use a lightsaber. And to me, again, I think it kind of feeds into there's a good, 20 years of history we don't know. She's also a scavenger, so she's been like pulling parts off of ships. It stands to reason she knows how a ship is put together.
And they cover a lot of that in the visual dictionary. And the funny thing is that I used to really get pissed at the Harry Potter movies once we got towards the later stages, because if you hadn't read the books, you didn't understand why some things were happening. And it's like, oh, well, you have to read the books. Shut up, I just want to enjoy the movie. But for 20 years, basically, she's been doing flight sims because there's nothing else to do. It's a backworlds desert planet. She has, learning how to field strip an AT-AT.
Yeah,
that's not.
It stands to reason
yeah.
She's not just going to know what those parts are. She's going to know how those parts work.
Exactly.
I do wish there was something in the movie, though. There's really not. That shows that. That was a bit.
It is such a glaring hole that you want that one little line of expository dialogue
to
get in there.
But I don't agree with the lightsaber. I'm not saying you're making this argument that people are making, because I think that she actually takes a little bit of time before she actually
she doesn't. To me, she doesn't look like she knows what she's doing with the lightsaber.
She's
just fighting with it. I mean, if anybody can pick up a sword and try to fight with it,
Yeah.
Kate, you really look like you want to add
I
something.
do, and I have two problems with it. Well, going back to the Mary Sue, I have two problems with this. First of all, usually a Mary Sue is an author inserting herself. So, what author is inserting themselves here? But number two, okay, fine. but number two, we don't question a lot of male hero types in this way at all. So the fact that we've suddenly just taken the male hero archetype and projected it onto a female character, a lot of these holes are just as applicable to somebody in a male position. Sure. So I don't like that we're questioning it more because there's a female involved, but I don't mind the questioning in general. Let's write scripts better and let's do characters better for everyone.
What do you guys think about Snoke as a character?
I don't like Snoke.
I don't like Snoke either.
I mean, that's all I have to say. I think that he is. I'm anxious to see what happens in the next episode, but the taste in my mouth is just.
Snoke does not look the way that we've seen it. He is not 20 feet tall. He doesn't have the things on his head. I think that was basically to appeal to what it appeals to Kylo's fanboyishness on it. But I don't think Snoke looks like that, and I pray to God it's not Darth Plagueis, but I can see that they might actually do that. And yeah, I agree with you on that. But somebody who could actually be on the other side of the galaxy, outside of the apprentice master overbit. It's not frickin' Voldemort. Quit trying to make that a thing. It's not a thing!
No meme here. No meme.
There was an essay, op-ed piece on if Lucas had made certain creative choices with the prequel trilogy, we would find them a lot more palatable. And, do you pursue a certain line of plot instead of focusing on the minutia of why things work the way midichlorians. That's the easiest way to explain it. Instead of focusing on midichlorians and stuff like that, the article was great. I thought it was a really well thought out piece. I wish they had elaborated on it because honestly, they could have sold a ton of stuff on the lecture circuit with it.
I haven't read the article, but I've heard the argument before, obviously, and I think of the same arguments people used to approach Tolkien with. Why do you spend so much time on world building and not so much time on actually developing this this specific story? Why do we love these? Why do we love as franchises so much these things that focus more on world building than they focus on narrative? I mean, someone can always pick up a script and work with it, but when you have real characters that feel palpable, I read a review, and I'm trying to remember his name right now, who liked this movie more than the prequels because of how palpable everything felt, because of that attention paid to Joseph Campbell and the rest of the history. He's a great guy. I'll have to post it somewhere later. Great reviews, but I feel like we enjoy these things as franchises more because of the room we have to argue, because of the room we have to debate, and because of the room that we have to embrace these characters who feel like real people.
Because there is that question of when you look at like the light side and the way it's portrayed in the movies, like everyone's like a slave and they live on a desert planet, and then you look at the dark side, they're in these awesome ships with cool uniforms. It's like, hey, the dark side is kind of cool looking, in a way. I mean, I could see that being alluring, just the aesthetic of it all. Like, we don't want to live like in poverty anymore, so if we become the dark side, we get all this class, So I could see that being an argument.
I think a lot of it also has to do with Lucas's worldview, and I think that the writer of the article actually delved into this a piece. And I need to go back and reread it. We'll both. I'll send you the link and we can blast it out. But I think Lucas is chained to his own worldview, and remember, he came of age in late 60s as a filmmaker, and that colors the way that he writes really everything, including Strange Magic, which I think 5 people saw. But it's a very it's a very telling thing on how what his worldview is. I think that when you let somebody like Lawrence Kasdan or Lee Brackett write the scripts, they get away from the very regimental dogma of what Lucas's scripts were, and I think that's where the fun really kicks in.
Yeah, well, and he obviously based the Empire and a lot of that off of Nazi Germany, and there were a lot of parallels there as well. But I do think that's an interesting discussion because there is kind of like a slickness to. Kate, you want to add to that?
Well, Theoretically, if you look at it, you look at this sort of ideological forces that were shaping Nazi fascism and then everything else that was kind of coming up around it, and you have like this intense hyper, I don't want to say capitalism with a capital C, but more like the idea that, profit is profit and it doesn't matter how I come about it. And then you have this other end where I don't want to necessarily say any other theory with a capital anything, but I consider the people around me and how they factor into this in addition to myself. And I feel like that is definitely a theme that goes on in Lucas's work because of growing up in 1960s counterculture and because of being exposed to those ideas.
I think that's a really good point that you make, though, is that we don't know what else happened. That was just the breaking point. Seeing your son go to the dark side, which is the one thing you were scared of more than anything else, is that he's going to wind up like his grandpappy, who's going to be shaking his fist at the universe saying, I'm going to rule you all. That would send me back to wanting to run around with my other hairy wife in a freighter far, far away. Absolutely. And with Luke, I don't blame Luke one bit for it in saying, you know what, I don't want to screw up any more Jedi. I tried it. Yoda told me that I wasn't ready, and he died before he could tell me that I wasn't the last Skywalker. Fine, but it's all on my shoulders. And if I screw up the Force, it's screwed up forever, and the dark side will consume the entire galaxy. Well, guess what? Kind of screwed up. So I'm just going to go find this old temple and grow out my beard and be silent for 30 years.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have. We've got to wrap it up because they actually have another showing here in just a few minutes. But I want to thank you guys for coming out. It's been a lot of fun being up here today. Let's give a big hand to Adam, Devin, Kate, Griffin, and Kenneth all the way at the end. Check out their work. You can see us out in the front lobby. We'll talk to you. I'm Mark Walters at BigFanboy.com. Thanks for coming out, and you guys have a wonderful evening.